This is Damian Macy, representing the Friends of the Marshall Public Library. And today is Wednesday, June the 29th of 2016. And I have with me a longtime resident of the Marshall community, Kenneth, known as Kenny Snedeker. And I'm sure he has some interesting stories to tell us. And with that, I'll introduce you to Ken, and here he is.
Hi, Damon. Yeah, Kenny Snedeker, lifelong resident of good old Marshall, Illinois. I was born in Terre Haute, Indiana, November 25, 1936. Went to school here, and in 1953, after Jim Jones wrote And Sold From Here to Eternity, which was a blockbuster World War II work, I met my Uncle Johnny Snedeker, who I was living with, was contracted to build Jim's cavernous four-room home. They call it the bachelor pad. Mm-hmm. So I'd go out after school, and I was the cleanup boy. Clean up the mess the carpenters left all day long. And that's how I met, where I met Jim and Loney.
I'll just ask you, Ken, was Jim there when the construction was taking place and actually make any comments or changes as the construction was going on or not?
Yes. And all the men said, Uncle Johnny said, he was very easy to work for. Okay. And he was assisted by Loney's husband, Harry, who had actually did a lot of the design work. They originally saw the house in a magazine. It was Good Housekeeping. Anyway, they saw the basic plans in a magazine, and of course, changed some to suit Jim's likes and dislikes.
I see.
So Harry was very instrumental, and Jim was too.
So you saw it taking shape and coming up from the ground up then?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sure did. It was quite a thrill to be able to walk down off North 2nd down Beach Street to the colony. Of course, was already established when Jim built the house. He bought the Writers' Colony was on 5 acres that had belonged to Harry's mother, who lived across the hollow, where Mary Lou Laird's house is now, or she doesn't live there now. But anyway, Mrs. Handy's house is a big 2-story. And they had built a bridge, what do you call it, like a little suspension bridge across that hollow. Oh, okay. We could walk from the colony over to Mrs. Handy's. Because in the winter times, sometimes one of the writers close to publishing would stay with Mrs. Handy. Oh, because they closed the colony in the winter time. And Loney and Jim and some of the farther along riders would either go to Arizona or Florida, warmer climates.
Was there central heating or anything then in the cottages and the cabins at the colony? Was that mainly why they wrapped it up for the winter?
Yeah, there was no heating, no. Had to shut off the water and vacate the place once cold weather arrived. Well, and then when I graduated in 1954, I decided that I think maybe I'd like to write. Loney always said that she can get a book out of anybody, and I think she could. She was able to do it. She had that talent, and she especially liked to take in castaways and troubled soldiers, just about anybody. She was pretty much of a world-class social worker. She just had the ability to see talent in people and draw it out.
And really, that was kind of at a time before there was any, quote, social work being done,
Right,
too, I think.
Right. Yeah. Over the years, she'd written many soldiers during World War II.
Okay.
Had a lot of correspondence. She was a terrific letter writer. I've got some of her letters that she wrote to me that pretty touching. So, so after I graduated, 1954 high school, I went direct to Loney, and she took me in. I was surprised she did. We talked about it a little bit, and she explained her method, which I knew a little bit about. Her method of teaching, and she took me to one of the barracks. There was 2 5-room barracks. They were like 6-by-9 room, chair, desk, typewriter, and a cot. And that was it. There was no radios, no television, no alcohol, no newspapers, anything like that allowed.
Bare bones.
It was pretty much boot camp. I remember when I went there in '54, there was Al Nash. He's not a local person. There was Bert Bliss and Jerry Peacock. He wrote Valhalla. It was a good seller. Gerald Tesh. He wrote Never the Same Again. It didn't sell too well. And Sonny Daly.
Oh, yeah.
I remember Sonny was in the number 5 room of the barracks I was in. Although he didn't stay there, he worked there some, but he still lived at home. He didn't live on the colony grounds like I did. But he was get up at 5:30 a.m., go to the Ramada, which was the dining hall, kitchen mess, and toast, coffee, tea, or hot Jello shots. And you weren't allowed to talk to each other about any of your work or what you were doing. And it was back to your little Spartan room, and where Loney had assigned chapters, maybe from Hemingway, Steinbeck, Wolfe, Dos Passos, Fitzgerald, certain chapters or parts of their book she'd want you to copy on that typewriter. So you do that every day until about noon, until she thought you'd progressed along far enough. Maybe she'd want you to write a skit or a scene and turn into her. Of course, the first ones, and then she'd edit it. A lot of times, wad it up, throw it in the trash can, or give it back, change that.
Again, when you say copy, did you actually have that, let's say, Hemingway book beside you, and that's what you were typing from?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. I know, I wrote one little skit, turned into her one time. She says, "Oh, no more Hemingway. You're starting to sound too much like him." his writing style.
Okay.
But she had an unheard of method for teaching people how to write. Had never been tried before.
Was that copying then to try to get you to follow what that style was, or to learn the method that was flowing, or what? Okay.
Yeah, both. Yeah.
Okay.
First thing she said, though, I remember, she said, "I'm going to work on your ego. First thing you got to get rid of is your ego." She says, "I won't destroy it, but we're going to whittle it way down." It's one of the first things but I remember I wrote a little piece here about how I saw the colony, if I can read it.
Sure.
An unusual colony for writers was founded by Loney Turner Handy, Harry Handy, and James Jones informally in 1943. That's right after he got home from the service. It was chartered by the state of Illinois in 1951. It reflected the unique philosophy and forceful personality of Loney, who believed she could teach anyone to write. Her students, completely subsidized by the Handies, lived in Spartan accommodations, and their lives were controlled by Loney. She preferred to work with male renegades and castaways who had seen the worst of what the world had to offer. She could charm anyone with her honeyed voice, make them feel special and unique. And she certainly could.
Had you known her at all anywhere out in the community before you went out there?
No. No, I knew all her brothers, Harold the plumber, and Andy, Earl. I never knew any of her sisters. I think there was 12 in that family. It was a large family.
Big family.
Yeah. Yeah, they were great people. I loved the Turners. She was a very, very smart lady. She was 17 years Jones's senior. Yeah. There was Jim wrote, he published 10 novels, I think, 20 short stories and other articles. Voracious writer. I always said that he was born to write. I don't think he could have done anything else. In fact, it's been written that he made the statement, "I'm a writer by personality, that if I couldn't write, I'd probably kill myself." I believe that. There was 9 published writers came out of the colony. There was like probably a total of 100 went through. Some didn't last a day, a week, a month. But if you didn't follow Loney's rules, it was down the road, Joe.
So was that, you said, I believe in 1943 about when it started. So during the period of time that it operated, you say there were about 100 people went through that?
Well, the total from
Beginning
that until 64 when she died and it closed. I did see a whole lot of Jim when I was living at the colony. Usually sometimes in the afternoon he'd come over and jump on the trampoline. He was quite accomplished on that. And the pool, the swimming pool, which was really a large pond, is 40 feet deep. And he'd jump off that diving board and do whatever you call flips, and yeah. He liked to show off, but he was a gentleman, and never had a problem with him at all. Of course, he was our hero, of course.
Could all of the members of the colony use the pool?
Yes. Yeah, that the way we dressed in hot summertime, no air conditioning, we dressed very skimpily, usually just swim trunks. Some of those pretty skimpy. So it, of course, caused rumors around town that it was a nudist colony and full of homosexuals, since she preferred males and no females. Very, very few females, because it caused trouble. In fact, I like what she said one time about the reason she didn't allow females and how they could affect an artist's life. Women, love, marriage were enemies of artistic freedom, she counseled. Entrapments that diminished male energy, sapped and distracted from creative power. So Jim's sister was there for a while. She was a troubled person, but then, as you probably know, died there from a brain tumor. And that caused a lot of gossip around Marshall. I figured she was murdered, but Basil Moore was the coroner at the time. And when I forget who wanted it investigated. Anybody wanted her death investigated, and they came to Basil, and he showed him the original death certificate, and she was being treated for that brain tumor anyway. So,
Do you know approximately what her age was when she passed away?
she wasn't very old. Probably in her early 40s.
Oh.
I never met her. That was before my time.
Did she do some writing then too?
Yes.
Or no?
She had written a book. I think the title was "The Third Time You Killed Me," but it didn't see publication. So she died. That was the end of that.
So did you have some duties or things that were required to work there or maintain the facilities or anything?
Yeah, once we ate lunch, finished copying and writing in the morning, eat lunch about noon. Lonnie liked to fix lentil soup. So it had to be good for you because it was probably only food or something to that effect that was mentioned in the Bible. And she was a real Bible scholar. Gosh, she could quote so much from the Bible. And her letters would be full of
I don't think
biblical
I'd ever
quotes.
heard that before.
Yeah. Oh, she was highly read. You know, she finished high school here and was a tomboy in high school. In fact, the only girl on the boys' baseball team. She was a pitcher, starting pitcher.
I didn't know that.
No, she was always a rebel. You know, back in those days, considered a rebel, tomboy.
Now, did she do the cooking or the preparation of the meals?
She'd do some, yes. And she was a good cook. But it was nothing really elaborate. It was pretty simple food. A lot of cottage cheese, soups, lentil soup, and I like lentil soup. But then after lunch, you'd be assigned things to do around the colony. Pick up sticks, you know, do some mowing, clean some buildings. Just maintain the place.
Okay.
Jim's trailer was still there. His Air Star silver trailer that he lived in was when the colony originally opened. They put up tents, and then Harry, being superintendent of the Marathon Refinery, Robinson, had access to man and material. So they moved 2 cabins from Robinson, and Lonnie, she lived in one of the cabins, and the other one was more or less a guest house. And then their workmen built the refinery workmen built the 2 barracks, the laundry room, restroom, shower. And it's a real shame that the colony wasn't preserved. There's nothing there except the remodeling Jim's house. Not
Of course,
much
with the
left.
nature of tents and wood and all, it just deteriorates naturally from time unless some preservation work is done early in the stage.
Well, it was, most everything was torn down and turned into a subdivision or housing development. There was only one way in, that was off of North 2nd and Beach Street. But now, when I go west out of town, because we live down the country, west out on West Archer, and they got, of course, a new street to go into it, but that wasn't there
Right.
originally. I passed there, well, not every day, but close to it. And I always, sometimes I glance over and I can see it, see the whole place and the people and the memories we had there.
Does any of that property still fit in with the plot of the house, James Jones' original house? Part of the colony, is part of that still the part attached to the house that he built? Or has it all been pretty much sold off and redeveloped?
No, yeah, his house and the 1.8 acres that he built it on.
I wasn't sure how
It
much.
wasn't part of the original 5 acres.
Right.
It's
was off to
separate, but
the
it's
side.
joined.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's joined.
So from your experience there, did you do some writing?
A little bit. Of course, then I was there summer and fall and getting ready to close. I'd turn in a few, like what we call skits, short scenes, and seemed to be making a little progress. And Lonnie said, well, we're closing for the winter, so I'm going to send you to a friend of mine in Hollywood, Florida. They have an apartment house on the beach, and you can stay with them for a
Nice
while.
too.
So I went to Florida and stayed with Helen Chesney. Lonnie's friend. Until I took, well, in fact, I had a motorcycle, about a 1951 BSA 500cc single-cylinder motorcycle, British motorcycle. And I set some of my books down there that she wanted me to copy, boxed them up, sent them to the post office, hopped on the motorcycle. This is before interstates too. I rode that thing. It was probably 1,200 miles all the way to Hollywood, Florida.
Oh, gee.
And I'd worked the summer before on the railroad and I had about $500 saved up. It was a lot of money back then. And took that with me. And of course lived off of it till he was gone. And had to find a job and got a job as a busboy in a hotel right in the center of Hollywood, Florida. Well, turned out that was the coldest winter in Florida history. Well, when it's cold in Florida,
It's cold.
yeah, and you don't get any tourists. No tourists, no tips, very little money. So I sold the motorcycle for $100. That would have been in '55. Sold it for $100. Paid $400 for it, Terre Haute. Sold it for $100, and the train ticket home was $100. So right back in Marshall, I had a terrible cold, and Lonnie told me, you need to get into the world to get more living experience. I thought, well, military probably a good place to go. So I joined the Army. Spent 2 years there.
What year was that, Ken?
So I went in service March of '55 and got out '57. And while I was in there, we got married. So as she said, you bring a female into it, you probably just end up being a householder. Which I did, and it all worked out good. I have no regrets.
You said in the military. What branch of service were you in?
U.S. Army.
Army?
Stationed Fort Bliss, Texas. Artillery and missiles. Had really good duty. It was just tail end of Korea. One person that really stands out in my memory up there was Tom Shimales. He was a hard living novelist. He was World War II guerrilla fighter. against the Japanese in Burma.
Wow.
Oh, he saw nasty action, and it really affected him. But he was an excellent writer. And Lonnie told me once that he could turn out, a chapter a day sometimes when he was up to it.
That's a lot of writing, isn't it?
Yes, and with very little editing. But sometimes then he'd disappear, he'd take off and go on a drunken binge. And his family was in Chicago, and he was a big man, tall, real black hair. He was of Greek heritage. In fact, his second book told a lot about his Greek family in Chicago, but his first book, Never So Few, it was a big seller and made into a movie. It was pretty close to From Here to Eternity in acceptance. I sure like Tom. I used to, we had another fellow there, Rex Boland, from Tucson. I think he ran an Navajo Indian jewelry store. Because, I didn't bring my bracelet. Jim, on one of the trips out there, he must have stopped at this business and met Rex Boland. He drove an XK120 Jaguar. I got a picture of it in here. And kept it at the colony. And I used to, he let me chauffeur Tom Schmales to Terre Haute in that car on Old 40. I was big time then.
I bet.
I was important. Where was I going with that? No. But anyway, we were allowed to go to Terre Haute, once or twice a month. Lonnie turn the guys loose to go to the bars, and some of those that were old enough, the red light district, of course.
Did you have a curfew or a time that once you're released to go out there, a certain time that you had to be back?
No,
Nope.
I don't
Okay.
remember a curfew. The only time I went was to chauffeur Tom Schmales. They like to go to Bohannon's, the Marine Room, and but otherwise, we had a curfew the rest of the time. She wanted us in bed by 9 o'clock.
Did you keep any of your writings that you did?
No.
Okay.
No. I want to mention too, before I forget, that From Here to Eternity is included in the 100 best English novels of the 20th century.
Yes.
You probably knew that, but
I had heard that. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, my Uncle Johnny, I'm sure you knew Johnny Snedeker.
Oh yeah. Very well.
Yeah, fantastic human being. They don't come any better, but he introduced Jim to motorcycle riding. And Hubie Titus worked for Uncle Johnny. He rode a big Harley too. I think Fred Idle told me, Fred Idle Sr., that when Jim left Marshall and put the bike up for sale, he bought it.
Wow.
So, could be, I don't know. It's what Fred Idle told me.
Looks like you've got some wonderful articles there in your
there's
scrapbook
a lot
about
of-
the colony and about Marshall.
Yeah, there's quite a bit here.
I recall Jim Jones always drove usually a Chrysler convertible too.
That's right. Yeah. Dorothy Prevost has a story about that. Well,
Yeah.
you interviewed her, so she'd like to tell the story about the time she drove it around town with the top down. She felt real big, right? Jones convertible around town. That's Suzanne.
I used to go to the barber shop over here, Barney Bill House. And several times I was in there, James Jones happened to come in at the same time.
Really?
And he'd park his convertible over here, and he usually had his T-shirt rolled up with a pack of cigarettes in his sleeve.
Yep.
He used some rather colorful language usually too.
Oh, absolutely. He was salty. Oh yeah. Yeah. That was probably the fiercest battle when eternity was accepted by Scribners to take out all those F words. Oh, they had a terrible battle. He fought. They finally did remove some, but because that's the way they did then. They still do in the Army. That's the way they talk. In fact, even our kids today, here in Marshall, you hear, yeah.
Times have changed.
Yeah, sure have.
So, and I don't recall the year, but James Jones continued to write there after From Here to Eternity, as I recall.
Yes.
Didn't he? And didn't he produce some more books that were published and all after From Here to Eternity? Didn't he?
Yes, I think he published 9
Was it 9?
novels
Oh.
and 20 short stories and 2 other volumes about World War II and Vietnam. They were factual. They weren't novels.
Okay. Are those published somewhere in other words, where someone would have access to read them?
I used to have them, and I sold them to Dwight Conley.
Oh, okay.
I sold all my handy column collection, a lot of stuff signed by Loney and Jerry Peacock. Because nobody in my family was interested. Once I'm gone, I didn't know what would become of it, so I sold my library to, and then included those 2, the World War II one. It's a great big book, lots of photographs, and he interviewed a lot of the generals and officers. In the Vietnam Journal, he was requested to do it by some generals that were there, that commanded over there. So he wrote I don't know quite how to explain it, but it was a very large volume too, a big book, full of color photographs.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had those, but Dwight has them now. But I'm sure they're available on the internet. In fact, speaking of the internet, there's just, as you probably know, tons of stuff on the colony, and Jim Jones and Loney, and in fact, the snapshots I took of Jim and the colony, where they can be found. Just type the Loney Turner Handy Writers Colony, Loney Turner Handy Writers Colony. Use a search engine for my snapshots I took and donated to the university. And there's an interview there that Steve Cash, he was a local Terre Haute writer. He's written a lot about the colony and for the Tribune and other publications out of Terre Haute. Steve Cash, K-A-S-H. Oh, he interviewed me a long time ago, oral, and it's there on the internet. A lot of stuff on the internet. Unbelievable how much.
It's almost scary anymore, isn't
James
it?
Jones or anything, the Handy Colony.
It's interesting that you were there.
Yeah, I was there. I was quite proud that I was, and I got to live with, especially Loney, to me, she was the colony. She was such a unique person, and her personality and her method of teaching is what. And I didn't even go to her funeral when she died in '64, and I was back here. Of course, I was working, raising a family. In fact, none of the writers, nobody went.
Really?
And it was pretty. I felt bad. I felt ashamed myself that I didn't. I've been to her grave many times. Out here at Marshall Cemetery, she and Harry, but I didn't attend her funeral.
Now, he passed away before she did, didn't he?
He passed away in '63, and she passed away in '64.
Well, that
about a year later, yeah.
Close together.
Yeah, she was only 60. Jim was only 56 when he died. Congestive heart failure, of course. Martini City, wow. He was a martini man and smoked cigars.
It's a bad combination.
But I started to talk about when he would, I never did see him do it, but I've heard stories from local people. He'd come to town and maybe swim trunks and have his 6 shooters strapped around him or a big Bowie knife, walking the streets, go to a restaurant. And he'd have this turquoise jewelry, beautiful jewelry too, arms full of it. And of course that caused a lot of talk around Marshall, you know. There goes that nutcase Jim Jones. But he was harmless.
That turquoise jewelry, do you know where it might have gone? Did someone, his family keep it?
I don't know what might have become of that. I think Harold Turner's wife, Margaret, when Loney died and the colony was to be shut down, a lot of that stuff, I know the guns anyway, and manuscripts and her letters. Loney kept carbon copies of all the letters she wrote.
Oh.
And she'd written, gosh, thousands and thousands to people. And in fact, I'd like for you to read maybe a couple here
Oh, yeah.
and see her style and what she would say in her letters to you.
Love to.
But Margaret wound up with that, a lot of that stuff. And then it went to Sangamon University, University of Illinois. It was like distributed. Some even went to Austin, Texas for some reason, some university down there. It's all in here, I don't remember, but it got kind of scattered. But it's all been cataloged, and you can find that on the internet. Yeah.
I understood the script of the original From Here to Eternity now is at the University of Illinois.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that could have been kept in Marshall somehow. Did you ever have a chance to read through it?
No.
Okay.
No, never did.
With the letters you said there, would you like to read one of them? You may have a favorite.
Oh. Yeah, I might try. Here's one she wrote to me. No date on it, so it would have been in 1954. Kenny, this is the best writing you've done. This chapter shows a great deal of promise and is sensitive and has mood and emotion. Whatever you are copying or have copied is now beginning to tell. Just keep going. This will do for chapter 1, or maybe you'll want to make it chapter 2. It isn't important as yet. Just keep working and trying. The motorcycle scene isn't very good yet. Just let it go for now. In fact, later I think it would be better to write the motorcycle scene fresh from memory and not look at this. It hamstrings you too much, or does most writers, to work off old work. You don't copy. Instead, you have a tendency to hold yourself back with the old heavy work. First draft has to be done, but could be discarded after you have made a list of it in a notebook, just for ideas later. There is so much that has to be done to learn on. I like this chapter 1. Keep on working and we'll get back and rework it later. L. A lot of times she just type L or she'd sign L, not write out her full.
Did she type all of her letters then?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Let's see. On the back of that, you might save money and be wise to take a couple of math courses at high school. Kenny, plenty of people copy by longhand, and you can do that too. No matter how you do it, rented typewriter or every day by longhand, but copy every day. At the same time, morning, evening, or both.
I'll be darned.
I think she sent that to me when she shipped me to Florida.
That's great. Do you have another one there you'd like to share with us?
Here's one to Tom Shamalis. Pauline, I don't know who Pauline was, and Dave and Jean, I don't know who they are. Probably after my time. Dorothy, I don't know who she is. I might have. Oh, that's a long one.
Single space.
Yes. Kenny, conflict is the key to writing. People with problems. Duality. Internal inconsistency, which is the note of evil. The destruction of the Garden of Eden. Sin is always doubt and fear and worry and lack of belief in self. The reason we do not progress and go on to more and newer experiences is that we fear, in parentheses, thus nature doth make cowards of us all. As Shakespeare says, we fear to fly to evils that we know not of.
Wow. Kind of deep.
It gets very deep. Yeah, it gets very deep. Yeah, that was a long one, so I won't read all of it. But, Kenny, when you get an idea for a story, that is only part of it. And when you have gotten it down on paper, you have just made a good start. Good writing comes from getting a finished, polished, final draft that is clear, factual. The reader feels he is seeing a slice of life, just like going to the movies.
That's a good comparison.
So you have to write photographically. And I know Jim had to have a photographic mind and memory, had to. This makes paragraphs that are inside the character. How he feels, what he feels is tragically, terribly enjoyable, unenjoyable, important to this character. You, the author, have to get inside his skin and be this person. As soon as you write about Mr. Williams, you are that person, or Miss Fraser, whoever they are. Never, never, never are you Kenny, the author telling us about several people you have chosen to be characters in your scenes. You will then, after all this is done and set up and comes clear, you will then have to see that you, Kenny, the author, does not put in one extra word. You must select simple, clear sentences to make the writing a factual portrayal and set it all up as simple as if you are telling a story in court. If you want to copy Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises, 50 Grand, The Undefeated, not in succession, of course, never more than 25 pages at one time by any one author, always switch, and then copy from Raymond Chandler. If you don't have any Chandler books, let me know. Try this again.
So that one about the motorcycle, did you redo that and go back to her with a final or another copy?
I don't remember.
I just wondered.
I don't remember.
So obviously she was trying to get you into looking at the characters, I guess you were writing about, and put yourself in there.
Yes.
Was that the same philosophy that's used with all writers, or was this just something more for
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
Okay.
Like Jim's Maggio and Fatso in Eternity. When I've read that book 3 times, and each time I could feel the characters, how he was able to handle his characters, and you could just feel them in your body. I thought, at least I could.
That's the idea that she's trying to
Yeah.
get across.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was her. The reason she said, "Get rid of that ego."
That'd be kind of a
She
rude
said
shock for
she's
some people
gonna-
anyway, wouldn't it?
Well, some couldn't do it, so they were
that's
down the
right.
road.
Is that why some of them did not, quote, last there, as you said? Some of them were there a short time?
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of short timers. They didn't abide by her rules and methods. They thought maybe they were smarter, or some of them were intellectual and weirdos. It's her way or the highway.
Well, it worked for the time anyway. At
Sure
least for
did.
some of
It
them.
turned out.
Have you ever thought about going back and finishing anything you started in writing, or
No.
going back to write again
No,
sometime?
Interested in a lot of other things, and I didn't pursue it any further.
Well, it's sure interesting to hear her letters there. Okay, you were in the colony, and then you said you got married. Who was that young gal that you latched onto?
Well, my first wife was Deanne Murphy.
Okay.
And when I married her when I was in the Army,
In the Army.
and came back, went to work for her family, the Tarbles, at the stone quarry. I was office manager in the office, worked there 42 years.
Wow.
And then she died, and I married Sue, and had Kevin, had 3 children by Deanne and Kevin by Sue.
So how long did you say you worked at Tarbles? 40?
42 years.
Okay. That's a nice long tenure.
It was a good place to work, good people. Yeah, they took good care of me.
And that was always at the Quality Lime? Was
Quality
it always
Lime
been-
and Charleston Stone Company,
Okay,
the quarry at Charleston.
yeah.
And then had a ready-mix business in Charleston.
Did, you mentioned your present wife, Sue. What was her maiden name?
Amaker,
I know that, but interested to hear you say it. And she had long-term family history here too.
yeah. Yeah, she's quite a gal. Smart, one of a kind, really excellent mother. Raised our 4 kids. And they were small when she and I got married.
The aspect of Marshall, and since you'd always grown up here, are there some early memories that you have of downtown and what it looked like and the businesses and all? Some of the Wall Dog stuff has brought a little bit of that back.
Yeah, oh yeah, I remember, Macy's Hardware, Blankenship's, and Martin's Drug Store. And I had my first motorcycle Uncle Johnny bought for me was a Harley 125, 2-stroke. And it was prom night, and it was tying my shoe, and it broke shoestring. So I thought, well, I'll hop on the little baby Harley and run uptown to the hardware store and get the shoestrings. Well, I had parking meters, and I just jumped up the curb. Of course, I was in a hurry, jumped the curb, leaned the motorcycle up against the parking meter, and city cop came along and said, riding on the sidewalk. bad boy. And he took me down to
Oh, gee.
the Archer House, and I think there was a McDaniel that was like justice of the peace. Had a big desk over there in the corner. And they fined me $5. I cried like a baby. I was scared to death.
That was expensive shoestrings.
Yeah. Fined me $5 right on the sidewalk.
Did you get your shoestrings?
Yes. Of course, the candy kitchen was
Oh, yeah.
alive then, very alive. It was a neat place. I loved Emer Hall. Worked at Rademacher's. Jim Welton and I worked at Rademacher's when we were in high school, making soda pop and cho-chos. I don't know if you ever remember cho-cho.
Yeah.
Don Ferris he looked after that part of the business. And we'd made our cho-chos, and Jim and I usually sneak one and take it out of the paper cone, paper cup, and eat it and make sure it was okay. And Don would come along, "You owe me a dime for that, you owe me a dime for that." So, "You old tightwad, I'm not gonna pay you for it." Yeah, I spent a lot of time in the candy kitchen. Usually ate lunch there, grilled ham and cheese and a cherry Coke.
Oh, yeah, remember those?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember all the old businesses here, all the car dealerships and all the filling stations. And
We had a lot of those because of part of the major traffic. This was Route 40.
right.
And with all the traffic through town, that helped keep a lot of those businesses alive.
I remember when they parked in the annual parking in the center of the street.
I do too. And you look at that street today, and even with the traffic we have now, my gosh, that was kind of risky, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Do you remember the stoplight at 6th and Archer and Route 1?
Down here it was on a round concrete pedestal.
Pylon in the middle of the
Yes.
intersection.
Yes.
With one pole coming up and the four-way light on top.
Yep, yep. I don't remember it here, but
There was one here at 6th and Archer
I
also.
sure remember
Same
that
thing. And you talk about safety hazards.
Yeah.
I know people hit the darn thing, but my gosh, you look at something like that today, it wouldn't meet any safety standards.
no.
And I think, I believe, well, one time we had five car dealerships in Marshall too.
Oh, at least. Yeah. Kleinfelder had Hudson's. Glenn Martin had Frazier's.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Studebaker,
Yeah. Percy Stanfield.
Stanfield,
We had Diamond Tea.
and then the
Studebaker.
Chevrolet and Buick place out here,
Yeah. Simpson, Geckler.
and then
And,
Flowers.
Prevost. Yeah, Flowers.
Yeah.
Pontiac. And Prevost, Chrysler, Plymouth.
So I guess that's part of the fun memories of Marshall.
Yeah.
And it's been great sharing with you on these things, Ken. And I'm delighted to see that you brought some of those letters from the Writers' Colony, Loney. I think that really kind of ties in with, it's not just verbal history, but you've got some of the written history
Yeah.
there too. Are you planning to, should we say, leave that book to someone,
Well, I
genealogy
need
library,
to.
historical?
I've just been thinking lately what I
Yeah.
should do with it.
Because we all save things, and I don't know how
Yeah.
much of my family's going to be interested in what we've saved either, but it'd be nice to pass some of it along for future people
Yeah.
to see and read.
Oh, I'll throw this in and we'll continue with that. When Eternity was published, it was not allowed in this library. You knew that.
I heard that, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Did the
So-
movie ever show here in Marshall?
Yes, sure
couldn't-
did.
I couldn't
Yeah, I
recall that.
remember, I forgot about our neat theater there.
Whole Strand.
Yeah, I liked that theater. The
Neat.
blow of the black marble when you walked in. It was a neat theater, yeah, it sure was. In fact, Jim, Loney, Harry, I think we're up in the balcony
Oh, really? Okay.
viewing it. Yeah, when that was being filmed, in Hollywood, they hired Jim to come out as a consultant, paid him $1,000 a day.
Big bucks.
Yeah, yeah. And Lonnie went too.
Now, was it Montgomery Clift or some of the stars or something from that? Didn't a couple of those appear in Marshall or come back to Marshall too?
Yeah, sure did. Yeah, Montgomery Clift. Norman Mailer. Let's see, here's a picture. I didn't take this one. That's Montgomery and Loney.
Oh my, yes.
There's
Well, I'll tell you, this has been a delightful visit, and I appreciate you taking the time
enjoyed it.
to share some of that history with us. And there's usually one question that a couple of questions that I ask folks. If we've got so many modern conveniences and stuff around us, is there anything you'd have to say, I just couldn't live without that
Oh, today?
today?
Oh. Well, probably my ham radio. I got into ham radio back in the 60s, big time. And
Okay, if you were traveling in another part of the country or maybe even overseas or something, and someone said, where are you from? And you said, I'm from a little town of Marshall, Illinois. They'd say, where's that? Or what's that all about? What would you tell them about Marshall and why they might like to visit here?
Well, it's the type of community I like, a rural community, small, nice people, home to the Handy Riders Colony, put Marshall on the map. Just a great place to live. I've never been overseas, but around the United States some. Go to Florida every winter, used to go to Florida every winter for bike week. And couldn't wait to get back home to Marshall.
Do you still ride?
No, Sue and I sold our Harley Davidsons. I still have a couple, but I don't ride them anymore.
It's probably the safe thing to do.
Well, between us, we had ridden 100 years of motorcycle ride time and never got a scratch. And I'm almost 80.
You're lucky.
I've got all blood thinner and stents, and I've got a pacemaker, and I don't heal like I used to. So we decided to give it up while we're still unscathed.
That's a good choice and a good way to look at it. Well, again, I want to say thank you, Ken. Really appreciate it. And this is not so much for today, tomorrow, but somewhere in the future, someone's going to listen to this and say, gee, I didn't know that about Ken. Or that was an interesting thing about the Riders Colony. So again, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.